Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, March the 30th, the last Sunday of March 2025. And tonight we'll be chatting with our good friend, Allan Wall. Allan, of course, an old friend of our show, blogger, and keeps up with Mexico news. Allan, welcome. It's always great to have you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be on the show again.
All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about tonight, some very serious things, but I thought we would begin with a more lighthearted story that you wrote recently here on your blog, and that's about beavers. And I'm not talking about Wally's brother. I'm talking about real beavers who apparently live in Mexico. You really got me on that one. I had no idea that they were beavers in Mexico, Allan.
That's right. And they're apparently expanding their range southward. It used to be the only ones were right along the border, but now there's been many sightings around this in the city of Monterrey on the two rivers there. So they're expanding their range, it appears.
Well, they're doing what the God intended them to do, I guess, which is to
That's right.
control the water flow in rivers. But I had always, when I saw your article, I had always, it caught me by surprise because I had always associated beavers with Wisconsin or Michigan,
right,
or Minnesota. Those areas, I guess they have rivers in Mexico too, of course. But I had always associated beavers more with a colder climate.
Right.
So that's why it caught me by surprise to read. I wonder how they got to Mexico. Maybe they walked. They went down to Mexico from Minnesota or something, or maybe they're just natural there.
Well, eventually, if you look at a habitat map, they're over most of the United States. I guess over time they must have traveled along rivers, but at some points, they could go in one river that goes into another river, and they could get all the way down the Mississippi, and that would get them down to the Gulf of Mexico. And, just gradually moving along the rivers, they're always on the lookout for that.
Yeah. And I'm sure, pardon?
Very industrious and intelligent animals.
They are. I mean, as I said, I remember reading about them when I was in school, and I was always so impressed with the fact that, they have such an important role to play in the ecosystem.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, their job is to keep, somebody called them, they make, natural dams, I guess,
right.
They control the water flow that way. But anyway, beaver, what do they call them in Mexico? I forgot that.
Castor, Castor.
Okay, castor. Okay. Well, maybe that's what the Mexican version of Leave It to Beaver is.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah,
I remember that show, yeah.
Yeah, they can say déjaselo a Castor. Leave it to be
right.
To be, but it's a fun story. I really appreciate your sending that. It was a really great story. It's always nice to have a little relief,
right,
from all the other serious stuff that we're going to get into right now. Well, here we are, Allan, 60 days or 75 days, I guess, into the Trump presidency. And I am amazed the success that he's had on the border. I just saw a note. I sent you this note. Maybe you had a chance to see it. The governor of Texas, Abbott, just said that they did not have a single person come in over at Eagle Pass for several days this week. So
just amazing, yes.
Amazing. When you consider what it was like
right.
a few months back, I mean, in the summer and in the spring. Now, one person going through Eagle Pass, which had always been a area of tremendous traffic. So, there were some signs today here in Dallas. There was a march calling for immigration reform. And it occurred to me that, one of the speakers was saying that our immigration system is broken. And I said, not really. It's working out pretty well. Trump has put it back together.
Right.
It's working. It works real well when people enforce the law.
Exactly. So it was never a problem of capability. It was a problem of will. of the government. Did the government have the will to enforce the law? That's the only question.
And it really, even under President Obama, we may dislike him in other ways, but he was not an easy open border guy. He deported over 3 million people. And I was listening to this fellow, Tom Holman, and he was saying that Obama was not in favor of open borders, that, as I said, he deported 3 million people while he was president. It just seems that all of this really fell apart during the Biden presidency. And it kind of makes you wonder why. Why did it fall apart? Why did they decide not to enforce the law, Allan? That's, I guess we'll never know, or we can speculate, but it really was brutal for the country. It did the country a tremendous harm. And it, as I've mentioned a couple of times when I've been on Univision, if you want immigration reform, don't blame it on Trump, because the one who really killed it was Biden.
Oh, yes.
Because he's the one that killed, there's no appetite for it right now, Allan.
Right. And it was a definite policy. It was a deliberate policy. And yet, I even saw an interview the other day with Bernie Sanders, and he was criticizing it. He said, yes, of course. They asked him if Trump had done anything correct, from his perspective. And he pointed out the border.
Right.
And very, very honestly, answered that question.
He did. I saw that too. That he also said something about fentanyl too.
Oh, yes.
And his, no, but I think this is an incredible achievement. And what makes it more incredible is that Biden could have done the same thing.
Exactly. He had the same resources.
Yeah. If he had done this in the spring, let's say last year, 2024, maybe that would have been enough to get Kamala Harris elected.
Could have been,
because this was simply a case of not enforcing laws and keeping the kind of order that you associate with a border. Look, as you know, I came here to the United States from Cuba when I was 12 years old, came with my parents, but we came in a orderly way, more consistent with the political asylum policies that the country has had over the years. So, we came here in an orderly way. When we crossed immigration and we were on let's say, on the American side of the airport, my father already had, the paperwork to work. We were never in the situation where we were illegal immigrants, because we followed the process. We were, we followed the rules, and the minute we crossed over, we were already in the country legally, which makes a big difference, Allan.
Yes.
And of course, the other thing too, I think, and you've written a lot about this, is this kind of illegal immigration and chaos. Then when you mix that with the drug traffic, it's explosive. Eventually it will destroy the country. I'm not blaming all of the consumption on Mexico, because we're the ones consuming. I know that.
Right.
But it doesn't help when the border is open.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, another topic that I want to get into, and that is that there is a warship, the USS Gravely, a destroyer, in international waters. I'm not sure if I think it's in the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America side, whatever they call it these days. Whatever they call it. I think they call it Mexico in one country and America in the other. But anyway, it's in the Gulf. Let's say the Gulf near Texas. And there's a lot of talk in Mexico, and I've seen a lot of this, where many people in Mexico are fearful of a U.S. intervention. And when they ask me about it, I always say, Allan, no, I don't think there's going to be an intervention. I really don't see the need for it. There are far better ways of, if your intent is to destroy the cartels, you don't need to invade the country or fire missiles from a destroyer, Allan.
Right. I think it maybe is a show of force to show that we're serious, because in fact, there's another destroyer also there. So actually, they're bringing in two destroyers, which were previously in the Red Sea, shooting missiles at the Houthis, who are, shooting their missiles at, international shipping. But really, of what use are missiles against, smugglers? Really not much use. Now, of course, they have all their radar equipment, communication equipment, things like that. They can be of value with that. But I think it's mainly, other ships can do that. But I think it's mainly just a show of force and a show that, yes, we're now serious about this, maybe. Yeah, I think it's a little overblown, the reactions to it.
Yeah. Well, of course, from what the official position of the U.S. government is, that this ship is in waters to stop drug trafficking into the United States. I think that's what they're saying publicly, that their job is to patrol the waters to stop some of the drugs that may be coming by sea or whatever. And that makes sense to me. That I can see. But a destroyer by itself, I'm not an expert on these things, but a destroyer by itself, it doesn't have any planes, right? Or it doesn't have the ability to, I mean, it can fire some missiles, I guess.
Right.
But it doesn't have the ability to, well, maybe they can send drones maybe from it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But if you really wanted to do an invasion, a destroyer is not going to get you very far, Alan.
Well, and there's already Coast Guard vessels all in that area, and they're already working on the interdiction of drug smugglers, etc. But I suppose they're all integrated now, and they're all in communication, and they can, hopefully find out where all these people are crossing, and then somebody can go get them. Yeah. But it just seems like overkill to have a destroyer. But I guess it's just part of the new image,
But it could very well be, like you said, just a show of force, and simply say, hey, look, we're very serious about this. Now, the other thing too that I was thinking about, Alan, the focus on catching people bringing drugs by water, that could also be a good consequence of having shut down the border. Because if you make it more difficult to bring the drugs by just walking it over, and then you push these people to bring them by boats or by planes to the United States, that's what a destroyer could help you in, and identify some of these planes, or identify or stop some of these ships in the Gulf, Alan.
Yeah, it could be a sign of a success on the land border. So, of course, they turn to other routes, which there's many routes. Some of them come on the West Coast. Some of them come from the Bahamas to Florida. Some in the Gulf. So it's good to have a lot of vessels out there, keeping track of everything.
That's right. No, they have tremendous radar capabilities, I would think.
Yes.
These destroyers. And I would assume that if there's one, like you said, there's another one too, right? In the area. There's two of them, and I'm sure they coordinate with planes and the Coast Guard and all of that. Right here in Texas. But I think the fact that they're focusing so much on the water is an indication of how successful the land operations have been. That's just my non-military conclusion.
I think that's right. Yes. Yeah. It's amazing what they've accomplished already.
It is really remarkable. Now, one of the things, and I have a post coming out about this tomorrow, but one of the things that I mentioned is that I think the reaction to the Gravely, the USS Gravely, and general, military, all this talk about military, is a nationalistic impulse, not too much different than Canada. Because in Canada is totally different. But what Trump has done in Canada is that he has really exposed how weak the Canadian economy is. The dependence on the U.S., the fact that they cannot defend themselves, that they're not spending enough money on NATO, and he's basically been exposing all of this. And now you see the conservative candidate up there basically saying the same thing Trump is saying. We're going to cut taxes. If you build in Canada, we're not going to tax you or put a tariff on you. I mean, he's basically saying the same thing that Trump is saying: build here, and we'll give you all kinds of advantages, almost identical to what Trump is saying. So I think that as much as Mexicans may hate to hear this, I actually think he's done Mexico and Canada a favor by forcing them to confront their vulnerabilities, Alan.
Well, hopefully that's correct. Now, they have an election in Canada in April.
Like coming up, yeah.
Interesting to see which party is going to win and how this will affect it.
Well, it has given the incumbent party a lot to talk about.
Yes,
they're the ones who are being more anti-Trump. Well, the other one too. But I mean, if Trump would ask me for my advice, I would say stop talking about the 51st.
Oh
state.
Yeah, that's not productive.
That's not productive because all you're doing is giving, you're feeding the nationalist element.
And by the way, did you ever think Canada would vote? Most likely be a Democrat. If supposing, it's about the population of California and would probably vote Democrat. I mean, that would be
no, I agree. It would guarantee a Democrat.
Crazy idea.
But really, when you think about it, and I was talking to a Canadian friend about this, the idea of Canada as a country becoming a state, it's almost impossible because you're talking about British Columbia 3 hours away from Newfoundland, okay, or whatever this province is. I mean, they're totally different areas. It wouldn't make any sense to have a state like that. Now, if you're talking about provinces, like let's say that's another question. There's talk of Alberta, for example, wants to break away. Now I understand Quebec is back on its independence talk again.
Yes.
But that's different. A province, I think we could handle easily.
Right, province by province, depending on the province. Yeah.
But they're very different. I mean, I'm not sure we could actually absorb a country like Canada simply because of their welfare state, their healthcare. I mean, it would be a serious adjustment to bring in Canada into the United States because, I mean, so much would have to change for the Canadians, Alan.
And I've always thought that, like the prairie provinces might be the most compatible. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they might be the most compatible. They seem like, Midwestern U.S. states.
They are.
But still, and then, of course, British Columbia is kind of like Washington and Oregon. And now, but Quebec would not be compatible.
No.
At all. And plus they have their own nationalist aspirations. You'd have to take it, you're just supposing, you'd have to take it province by province.
Right.
That's
the only way it would work. I mean, if you took, for example, an alliance of, let's say, Manitoba, like you said, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, that's the one I always had trouble pronouncing when I was in school. We used to learn the Canadian provinces, but those three maybe would be a good fit. Those would be more conservative.
Right.
So they would probably vote like Montana or Wyoming or something like that. Those would be more conservative. Ontario is really, from what I can see from down here, the most cosmopolitan, almost the most international. I mean, they seem to have an influx of immigrants from everywhere in Ontario. And Quebec, I think Quebec has always wanted to be French or its own country, So, I mean, it's a crazy idea to talk about the 51st state. It's never going to happen.
I wish he'd stop saying that. It's not.
Honestly, I think you're right. I wish he would too, because all he's doing is giving the liberals a chance to squeak a victory.
In fact, they've improved in the polls since this all began.
That's right. No, you're right.
So be careful.
No, you're right. You're right. And I wish he would stop talking about it. But, sometimes that's the good news and bad news of Trump. If Trump knows
Yeah.
that he's saying something that irritates you. He keeps on saying it.
Right. Right.
And that's, as I say, sometimes he needs to control that part of his personality. But the same nationalistic reaction is happening in Mexico, and I think it's because they know the problems that they have. They can criticize Trump all they want, but Pemex is a disaster, and they know it. Every Mexican knows it. They have to send oil to Houston
To
to be
be
turned
refined.
into gasoline.
It's
You know,
incredible.
it
Yeah.
is incredible. And every time that I say that to a Mexican friend, you can just see their face get ready to explode because they know how stupid that is. That
Yes.
Mexico has to send crude oil to Houston or Louisiana to be refined, and then I guess they send it back in a
And they
pipe,
send it back.
in a pipeline to and
What a oh wow.
no, it is, but it's a reflection of
Incredible.
Pemex. Really, that's
Yeah.
what it is. I mean, that's what it is. But anyway, I don't expect any invasion of Mexico. Now, the only thing that resembles military to me would be maybe a targeted elimination of cartel leaders. That might happen, where we may want to, let's say, take out one or two or arrest a couple of them if they travel, or we have a chance to arrest them. But I think a military intervention would have so much collateral damage that
Oh
it would be
yes.
counterproductive.
I agree. I just don't think it's a good idea.
No, I don't either. There are better ways, and I think closing the border is perhaps the best of all, Alan.
Yes. Yes.
That seems to be working. Well, one last topic that I want to get into. This is a scandal from what Mexicans are telling me. This is a real scandal in Mexico. There's a ranch in the state of Jalisco where they discovered, help me or fill me in or correct me if I'm wrong, where they've discovered a bunch of bodies that they associate with cartel killings. And this thing is a scandal. You've got mothers looking for their sons and daughters, and the whole thing is just blown up in the face of President Scheinbaum, and she doesn't seem to be able to manage it very well. I'm not sure anybody could, Alan.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And the thing is, the people who discovered it were not professional law enforcement. They were community activists who went in there and found like all those shoes. That reminds you of the Holocaust right there.
Yes, that's right.
Shoes, clothing items, bones. That is just grisly. I mean, that is and to make matters worse, 6 months ago, law enforcement went in there. They didn't find all this. So are they just incompetent, or is it collusion? It just really looks bad no matter how you cut it.
No, and I think what the government should do is to just come clean and say, look, this is a mess, and we
Yes.
take full responsibility for it, and blame us. Don't blame anybody. Just blame us, and we accept responsibility for it, because it is really their responsibility. It happened on well, I guess López Obrador was technically the president when this started, right. But still, they're trying to be cute with their answers and their replies. And all I can tell you is that from time to time, a couple of times a week, I catch some of these podcasts coming out of Mexico, and they are really coming down very hard on the president, on the government, on the previous president. Now, to be fair, maybe some of these podcasters are more anti-government than they are, let's say, objective. Maybe that's the case. But this has become a real scandal. Almost remember what happened when Peña Nieto was president and they had those 40 students missing. Remember that?
Yes, right.
It's kind of in that type of a scandal.
Very.
And I guess some of the mothers were marching, and
yes,
they wanted to get a hearing with the president of Mexico, and it didn't work out that way. But I'm beginning to wonder, speaking generally about this president of Mexico, if maybe she would be better off stopping these daily press conferences.
It seems because
too much. It's too much exposure.
It's too much. Yeah.
López Obrador did it because he had the kind of personality to do it.
Right.
And let's just say, he didn't have scandals like this to deal with. But
Well,
this
what she
lady,
could do is, oh, excuse me, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, she could, she does 5 a week, maybe cut it down to 3 a week, see how that works, or 2 a week. You don't necessarily have to be out there every single day.
Or do
But of
it more
course,
like Trump does it. Trump does it
right.
informally. He
Yes.
just, if he's doing something, then he'll take questions
Yes.
instead of calling it a press conference
Right.
formally.
Right.
But from what I understand, these are called mañaneras, and they are
Yes.
every morning at 9 o'clock, I think.
Right. Right.
And it's like, I guess theoretically it's a good idea to talk to people every day, but I think it can also overexpose the candidate or the
Yes.
president, Alan.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Something
anyway,
to think about.
yeah. So I guess those tariffs with Mexico are going to go into effect early April, from what I understand.
Right. The automotive tariffs.
The automotive tariffs. I am, if I am critical of anything with respect to these tariffs, the thing that I'm critical of, I guess I should put it this way, is that I think it would have been better if they had just waited until April 2nd and say our tariff policy is going to be whatever you charge, we're going to charge you. Because I think most Americans would go for that. Seems fair to me.
That's fair, I think. Yes,
it is. But when you start saying we're going to charge Mexico this and we're going to charge Canada that and the European Union that, then I don't know, it may get lost a little bit in how people are understanding it. It's almost like, okay, it's Monday. Who are we increasing tariffs on today?
Right. Plus, you've got, okay, when we talk about Canada and Mexico, Canada and Mexico were in the USMCA. So, he negotiated that in his first term, and he said it was a good deal. So,
well, that's the part that I don't get either, because he negotiated that. And
he did. He actually did that, right?
Remember, he wanted to change NAFTA, and he put this one in. And
said it was great.
He said it was perfect. Remember, he said it was perfect.
Right. And so, like those cars, some of them, they'll go back and forth across the border.
Right.
Wow, you got to, first off, if you say it's an importation of automobile, well, what percentage of it actually is, because they're making it on, they cross the borders back and forth. Yeah. So I don't know. I wished I think the reciprocal, really, that seems pretty fair.
Well, but it's also politically easier to explain.
Yes, right.
Which at the end of the day, it's how you explain these things that matters. Right. I don't think the average person is going to sit there and really do a calculation of what tariff is going to do to the price of avocado or the price of an automobile. But if you say, we're going to charge you the same thing you're charging us, that seems fair. And the way I would present it would be to say, look, we're going to charge you the same thing you charge us, with the hope that both of us can have a lower tariff or no tariff at all. That's how I would do it. That's how I would pursue it. So let's say you and I are doing business, and I say, look, Alan, I'm going to charge you the same thing you're charging me, but why don't we just get together and eliminate all the tariffs altogether? That I think would be a wonderful solution for everybody, Alan.
Yeah, I think Trump, it's hard to tell, because I think he sort of wants to move back. It used to be our country had a lot of very high tariffs on all countries. And like in the 1800s, that was the way our government made money. Well, that's a big change, though, to change from our current system. And really, you need more time, and you need to get the society on board with you to do that, because it's a very big change.
Yes, I didn't know that President Trump's favorite president was William McKinley. That apparently it was William McKinley who was big on tariffs.
Right.
That's the example that I keep on using. I do feel, in defense of President Trump, that we need to charge whatever they charge us. And
Yeah,
that I'm 100%
that's
with.
pretty simple.
And that's pretty simple. And if we can do that, I believe that ultimately they will drop their tariff because they need to sell in the United States, Alan. I mean, if you're a European car maker, you got to sell in the United States. If you're in Mexico, you got to sell your avocados here. So eventually, everybody wants to sell in the United States. And if Trump says, "Okay, great, you can sell, but I want to have the same conditions back," if he can do that, I think that would be great, and everybody would win if that were to happen. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but that's what I think should happen.
Well, we'll see because it's every month it's something new, right? So we're going
Well,
to find out.
that's been the confusing part, you
Yes.
know. And I do like the objective of bringing more manufacturing back to the states. I like
That
that
that's a
from
good goal. Yes.
from a national security standpoint. I mean, look, World War II, we were able to our industrial machine was able to basically build all that military stuff
Right.
because we had the ability to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
right now, I'm not so sure we could.
And
Uh,
China. Now that's a big, like in the COVID era, we discovered a lot of medical items were made there. I would be more worried about China than Mexico and Canada.
oh, I agree. In fact, that's exactly right. That's where I would focus. My biggest fear with
Focus. Yes.
Mexico, see, my biggest fear with Mexico is not Mexico, but China using Mexico to come into the North
Right.
American market. That's what I fear the most.
That's a danger.
Well, Alan, my gosh, we solved all the problems in the world tonight. I'm not sure if we did. We certainly tried. But
Right.
I love your story about beavers. Keep it up. You know, maybe the next time we talk, you find another animal that lives in Mexico. But the beaver story was just absolutely great. Congratulations for digging it up.
Oh, well,
How did
thank
you
you.
find out about it? I'm just curious. How did you
Oh,
learn about it?
I just ran across it reading an article on this Mexican website. And there's a wildlife website in Mexico, and it's a really cute picture too. That beaver, and there's a website where people in Mexico, they will send in photographs they take of wildlife, and
Wow.
some really good photographs too.
Yeah, that's right. No, I loved it. I thought it was a great story about beavers because, as I said, I had no idea they were south of the border. I
Oh,
thought they
yeah.
were all basically concentrated in around Lake Michigan and by the Great Lakes, maybe in Canada too. I would assume
Oh,
they have
yeah, there
beavers up
too.
there as
Yes,
well.
yes,
There as well.
right.
I just never thought that they would be down in Mexico, but you learn something new. See, that's what happens when you read your website about Mexico. You pick up something new. You learn about beavers.
Yeah.
All right, Alan, thank you so much and good night to you. My best to your family. And thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you.
All
Enjoyed the
right. Good
talk.
night. Good night, Alan. Our good friend, Allan Wall, he's the editor of Mexico News Report, publishes that often. A lot of articles, a lot of interesting things. And this article that he wrote about the beavers just really caught my attention. Who would have believed that there are beavers in Mexico? Snakes, yes, lots of snakes, but beavers, I just had no idea. Had no idea, but there they are somewhere in Mexico. Beavers. I wonder if they connect with their cousins up in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Who knows? Well, this is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll talk to you later. Good night, everybody.